country where snake eats money, elephant eats money, money are missing, money is missing, and we're just in a funny situation where enormous amount of money is missing, and nobody is held accountable. Nothing is done. Yeah. Okay, so I'll take you to the House of Representatives today, where the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Representatives has revealed that according to the Accountant General's report, over 250 billion naira in public expenditures remain unaccounted for. The chairman of the committee, Honorable Bamidele Salam, said that these while briefing journalists at the National Assembly. It says the committee also listed high incidence of unauthorized violence, growing numbers of audit queries each fiscal year, and the reported cases of more than 60% of MDAs persistently failing to comply with financial regulations as trends which continue to erode public trust, undermine sustainable national development, and weaken our democratic institutions. So let's now get to hear more from Honorable Bamidele Salam, who is the chair of the House Committee on Public Accounting. It's live for us here in our Abuja studio. Thanks so much, Honorable, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sean. Good evening, Nigerians.
Thank you so much indeed. How damning is the report of the Auditor General from the Auditor General's office?
Well, the report of the Auditor General, to put it in the context, is a statutory report. It's a constitutional report, which the Constitution, under Section 85, has made mandatory for the Auditor General, apart from issuing a report on the consolidated financial statement of the Federation, to also issue reports based on the audit exercises carried out on ministries, departments, and agencies, and see the level of their compliance with extant laws and regulations on finances. And over the years, of course, the report has contained very worrisome discoveries, very worrisome incident of impunity, violation of several of our laws, as well as outright theft of public funds. And the one we're talking about in particular in this instance, Sean, has to do with the audit exercise carried out by the Auditor General for the Federation for the years 2019, 2020, and 2021, because the last of the set of reports that was presented to the National Assembly by that office, as required by the Constitution, is the 2021 report, and that is where these various sums that we have spoken about have been discovered, misappropriated, misapplied, quite a number of issues,
infractions
identified, yes, by the Auditor General. Well, you said 250 billion naira, but I want to assure you that it's even more than that. If you take into consideration also the report of the Auditor General on the expenditure of the COVID-19 funds of almost over 1 trillion naira, and what the Auditor General discovered about the
ones
COVID-19 expenditure.
Is it the ones we borrowed, or the ones that came from the coffers
both
of the federal
the ones from our normal appropriation and the ones that are intervention funds. Of course, some were borrowed and some were intervention funds from special purpose vehicles created to address, one, the pandemic itself, and then the fallout of the pandemic in terms of reflating the economy. Those are also very mind-boggling disclosures by the Office of the Auditor General.
And these are years, the years in review, under review rather, are years when Muhammadu Buhari was president of Nigeria, 2019, 2020, and 2021.
Absolutely, there are those years where President Muhammadu Buhari was the president of the Federal Republic
and
of
up
Nigeria.
to now, the report of the Auditor General shows that there are great infractions, unaccounted funds, misapplied funds, misappropriated funds, and nothing has yet been done. Are there ministry agencies names that have been identified? Because in government spending, there are linkage to personality, to offices, and to specific names. What do we know, Honorable?
All right, so it will actually not be correct to also say nothing is being done or nothing is being done. That would not be absolutely correct, because these things also take processes. Some of the issues identified by the General for the Federation are issues that for example, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has taken up an issue. I'm sure we're all familiar with the Emefiele saga, for example, which were also a product of some of the forensic audit that were carried out by a special set of auditors appointed by government. And you see, some of these reports, for example, talking about the COVID-19, the COVID-19 investigation took about 3 months in the Public Accounts Committee, and the reports were laid before the House, considered by the House, and those recommendations normally will go back also to the executive for some administrative, some, legal processes where people need to be charged to court, where people need to be indicted, and whatever. Let me give you some of the instances of the things contained in those reports we're talking about. For example, there is a report that there are overpayments of almost 100 billion naira to contractors. There are reports about irregular payment of allowances totaling over 25 billion naira to persons, both political office holders, non-political office holders within the period. There's a report on non-deduction of statutory stamp duty of over 500 million naira. In other words, money that were meant to be deducted and paid to the government, to the FIRS, were not even deducted. Violation of due process on procurement, 800 billion naira. Government revenue not accounted for, about 35 billion naira. Like I said, when this report comes before the National Assembly and committed to the Public Account Committee, what we do is to sit like a jury. So we provide opportunities for those ministry, departments, and agencies that are indicted by the Attorney General to come forward for a defense. And in most cases, what you find is that these agencies will write in asking for more time, pushing for postponement of hearings, and also showing one of the reasons why some of these things become also a little bit complex is because imagine considering a report of what happened in year 2020 in 2025. Some of the major actors in the approval and execution of the funding pattern are either retired, they have changed job roles, or some have even died in the course of time.
The crime scene, the evidence has led the crime scene.
Almost, that. So at times it provides also a fait accompli that all that you are doing is similar to what the court will say it has turned to an academic exercise. But nevertheless, we still as a parliament interrogate those issues and lay that report before the plenary. As I speak with you, we have concluded on the report of the 2019 Auditor General's report laid before the House. 2020 fully concluded, laid before the House, as well as the COVID-19 investigation I told you has been concluded and laid before the House. There are quite a number of recoveries also that we have made, even in the course of time. If you have, I'm sure even the Chinese television reported a few of those recoveries in the oil and gas sector. Monies of almost 9 trillion naira that were meant to have been paid into the coffers of the federal government being sat upon by major business concerns in the oil and gas sector. And the Public Accounts Committee went into it, and many of these oil companies have started, paying
the Auditor General report also revealed, and this is quite interesting, but because when we had conversation on this program about the state of our refineries, there are those who came up and started spitting garbage because there are things that we knew they were wrong in some of the processes that went around the refineries. And now we're hearing that the Port Harcourt refinery, there are issues, there are this and that. But here, listen to what the Auditor General report, which I'd like you to also shed some light on. Now, in that report, published in November 2024, the report highlighted unauthorized deductions of 82 billion naira from Federation revenue for refinery rehabilitation. It also uncovered irregular deductions amounting to 343 billion naira from domestic crude sales at the source. It revealed that 343 billion naira was deducted unilaterally from gross domestic...
Did you say 2024, please?
2024, yeah. Published in November 2024, the Auditor General account. And it's also revealing that there are, from the gross domestic crude sales for NNPC value shortfalls, strategic stock holding costs, this is over 343 billion naira. And these are monies that are supposed to directly benefit the oil and gas sector.
Okay, let me correct something. The report was published in 2024, but it is a report that has to do with expenditure incurred in 2022 and 2021. And like I said, these are the reports that are currently being considered by the House, some of which we have concluded investigation on, and submitted the report. And it will not also be very good for me to go into the merit or demerit of some of those investigations, which letters have been written out to those agencies to provide us with further, further report. But like I said, Seun, a major problem that we have, which we also think we need to close that gap, is that of lack of cooperation from most of these ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Even if those who committed or allegedly committed those infractions have left service or they have retired, it does not mean that the records that are in the custody of these MDAs should not be made available to Parliament, because these records will speak to those issues. It is the oral testimonies that we may not be able to get, to be able to corroborate whatever is on the records. But what you have in most cases are MDAs trying all that they can procedurally, so that this does not happen.
Procedurally, just as you have in the courts, that there is a term for a particular case, especially in election matter, for it to run. Hasn't the rules of the House also provide for tenure upon which you can sit on this matter, and also sanctions to MDAs who are refusing or dodging or hiding away from this kind of scrutiny?
Well, unfortunately, there's no specific timeline provided for in our rules. But the committee, at least the 10th House of Representatives Committee on Public Account, has decided that after 3 unresponded invitations to any ministry, department, or agency, when we invited you 3 times and refused to reply, we will assume that you do not have a defense for those issues raised by the General for the Federation, and based on that, we'll go on to issue our report. But don't forget what I've told you. Unlike what happens in some other claims. In some claims, for example, I know that in Kenya, in South Africa, there is something similar to having a public account tribunal, where agencies or ministries that are indicted by the Public Account Committee will not have to be reported back to the executive. Because in this case, what you do is that you are reporting the executive to itself, unless you have a very strong willpower on the part of those who are charged with those responsibilities. You can have report lying there for so many weeks and so many months and so many years, and nothing will happen. Let me give you one example, Seun. There are many instances where, at the time of auditing, agencies refuse to provide the Auditor General with required documents, payment vouchers, both prepayment and post-payment vouchers, which are required by the Auditor General. But by the time the matter comes to the Public Account Committee, those that come to appear suddenly will bring those documents. A document that was not available in 2018, 2019, 2020, suddenly surfacing in 2021, 22, 23, should raise some red flags. In some other jurisdictions, especially I know that about the public account system in Ghana, as long as those documents were not provided within 14 days, of which they are required by the Auditor General to provide it, you are started bad from presenting them to anybody, either the Parliament or the court or any other. And these are some of the reforms which the Public Account Committee is trying to push, that we should also have now public accountability system.
In your mind, and you see all of this report, don't you wonder how some of these infractions go on? How dirty, or how... I'm trying to use the right adjective. How did things go wrong for public funds?
Well, you see,
in this age and time of digital trace and digital monitoring of public funds.
From my own experience, Seun, I think it's a combination of factors. And some of the factors, one of the volume of the reports that the Auditor General submitted to Parliament talks about internal control weaknesses. Some of the major infractions that you see are also as a result of lack of these control mechanisms in our various institutions, which is something that is very mind-boggling. Like Riley said, in this age and time, there are a lot of things that we should have put into our systems in a manner that will prevent. Because I'm an advocate of prevention when it comes to the issue of, accountability, lack of it, and fraud and what have you. If we are able to put in mechanisms that makes it even very difficult for these infractions to happen in the first instance, you will have less volume of money you are chasing after in terms of trying to recover, public funds. And that is why I think the issue of the audit bill, which the House of Reps has passed, and we are also believing that the Senate will concur and pass the audit bill comes in. The audit institution is the most veritable tool of preventing most of these infractions from happening.
I mean,
unfortunately, we have a very weak institution even at that level, and so, you know, it becomes so messy.
There are those who will also hold some of you accountable, those of you who are in government, and perhaps how some of you who are in parliament look on as some of these things happen. And those of you in opposition will perhaps now have a bigger role to play. For example, someone will ask, who passed the budget, or where did the money for the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road, who approved that budget? Where did it come from? Where did the money come from? And a few other spendings of the executive. These are big questions. Are you not worried about that?
Well, Shehu, I do not think that with the system we have in place at the moment, it will be possible for anyone to spend a public expenditure of that magnitude with that budgetary provision.
The Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway Fund come to the National Assembly.
I'm coming, Shehu. There are quite a number of funding options in the budget. There are funding options in the budget, for example, that are under Special Intervention Fund. There are funding options in the budget that are covered by our external borrowings, and they are also approved by the National Assembly. But in most cases, what people look for example, is maybe, you know, a particular line item of an issue being brought before the National Assembly. I agree with you, absolutely, that we need to do more, especially those of us who are from the minority political party, need to do more in holding government accountable to the people as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution.
There are those who will be asking questions, Honorable.
But it's not as if it's
the coastal highway, the procurement of the plane that was added to the presidential fleet.
I can tell
you
that the issue of the presidential aircraft passed through all legislative processes. Now, if you ask for my personal opinion, it's a different thing. On whether those things ought to have scaled through passage, that's a different matter. But the purchase of the presidential aircraft passed through the appropriate committee of the House and was laid before the House and passed for implementation by the House of Representatives. Certainly that was done.
And both all of you in the National Assembly gives a thumbs up.
No, now that is the issue. It is a democracy. In a democracy, you do not need everybody to agree on to anything. The majority will have its way, while the minority will have its say. The All Progressive Congress, which is the party in government today, has an overwhelming majority in both chambers of the National Assembly.
Are they overwhelming too in the manner in which things are going in the country? You are a member of the People's Democratic Party.
Oh, yes, I am.
A leading voice in the People's Democratic Party. Are you and your colleagues in the opposition happy with the way and manner things are going in the country?
Well, we wish things are better than they are today. I wish they are better. The PDP wishes things are done better. And in most cases, when government comes out with any policy, the People's Democratic Party, the Labour Party, and all the other parties in the minority brings out their position. Now, where it becomes worrying, and I must admit, because, you know, leadership is about taking responsibility, is the fact that I believe that as members of the minority political parties in the parliament, we ought to do more in keeping government on its toes and in ensuring that there are alternate views, alternate positions, alternate viewpoints, alternate agenda.
Are the voices of the ruling members drowning yours in the parliament?
Well,
the opposition.
You understand, Sean, there are quite a number of things that happened from the beginning of how the government itself was put up and how the minority parties in the parliament have been outspaced in terms of number. I mean, it's clear. And you see the flocking of people now from those minority parties into the majority political party, which is why people are crying, oh, that Nigeria is going to be turned into a one-party state and what have you. Of course, the minority voice is being daily decimated. It is not that the leadership of the House is not giving opportunity for anybody to air their view. And there are so many instances on the floor of the parliament that we have aired our views on very controversial matters and stood up to them. But we can't have our way because we do not have the number.
We understand that
it's a game of numbers.
The defection tsunami is going to your state gradually. Honorable,
I don't know what you're talking about. Which
Honorable Wale Oke has left for the APC.
No.
We understand that there are talks with your governor, Senator Adeleke, to also. Are you planning also to move to the APC?
No. And the answer is no. There's no plan of moving to the All Progressive. None that I'm aware of.
What about Senator Adeleke?
No,
he's a very good friend.
Yes, he's my leader. He's the governor of Osun State. He's doing very well. And he doesn't take any decision without carrying along all the stakeholders. A few weeks ago, he called a meeting of the stakeholders of the People's Democratic Party in Osun State and told us that he has decided to remain in the People's Democratic Party, the party that gave him the mantle of leadership to govern Osun State. And he's doing very well. The people of the state are very happy with him.
For 4 months
I don't have
now.
any issue with him. Yeah.
Also, 3 or 4 months now, the allocations to Osun State have been withheld.
Unfortunately.
Since February.
Allocations to local government in Osun State.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And on that, I actually find it very difficult to think that this was done with the express approval of Mr. President. I know President Bola Ahmed Tinubu fairly well. I know he's a Democrat. I know he's a fighter. I know he's the man who believes in social justice, especially when it comes to political struggle. And for the man who stood up against that when President Olusegun Obasanjo took the same step to seize local government funds in Lagos State, I will find it very, very difficult to think that he gave an approval for funds meant for payment of salary of workers of local government, funds meant to run primary health care, funds meant to maintain roads and provide borehole to people will be withheld by the federal government for 4 months.
Is it not?
I think some people somewhere.
The big question is in the manner in which Senator Adeleke and the government of Osun State had handled the issue of local government administration.
How was it handled?
And we understand that the Osun State government has since gone to the Supreme Court to challenge the position of the Attorney General of the Federation in withholding. And the Attorney General has stated it clearly that if you do not abide by the Supreme Court judgment on autonomy of the local government...
So what is the content of that judgment that Osun State government has violated? I don't know of any. Not one.
So you think this is political?
Let me even tell you, Sheung, if anything, Governor Adeleke should be commended for being about the one of very few governors who stood by the implementation of the Supreme Court judgment. Immediately that judgment was given by the Supreme Court. Unlike some other governors, Governor Adeleke dissolved all caretaker committees and immediately set in machinery the motion for election for conduct of election in Osun State. How many governors did that in Nigeria? The elections were conducted. 1 year notice for conduct of election. The elections were conducted. Local government chairmen and councillors were elected based on a valid order of the court.
So withholding of the allocation, so what else in your own view, is unjust?
Very unjust, illegal, unconstitutional, and inhumane. Like I've said,
do you think this is political?
If not, of course, yes. Of course, but those,
you think because your party,
but I don't know.
Instead, it's being run by PDP.
I don't know.
That's why
I don't know those who may be playing that politics. But Sheung, I know it is political. But like I've said, I don't think the president. He's the father of the nation. He's the leader of the nation.
Not be aware of that kind of.
Well, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt based on his antecedent on similar matters and issues. And I want to believe that he will not become president and suddenly, capitulate on the values he has held, on the positions he has held, on the constitutionality of the federal system of government. This is a federal system of government, for God's sake. The Constitution has delineated powers and responsibilities to each tier of government. And it will be unjust to cripple the third tier of government for whatever reason in a state of the federation. I think it is unfair, unjust, and inhuman.
Honorable Bamidele Salam is a member of the People's Democratic Party representing the Osun State in the House of Representatives, and is the chair of the Public Accounts Committee in the House of Representatives. Thanks so much indeed, Honorable, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks so much indeed.